Ladies and gentlemen, very good to see you, and also all the friends in the back. I can imagine you are still hesitating because I think the chair said you can either be here with me or you can stay at the drinks. And well, I can see that is at least a moment of hesitation. Dear friends, truly very good to see you, and can I just salute the organizers also for bringing us to this truly amazing place. I have to confess to you, I live only 5 minutes by foot from this museum, and it is truly amazing. My kids always wonder when I bring them here why we are not driving these type of cars. Well, that's because I made some wrong choices in the past in terms of a career, but they love coming here, and I could really suggest you start at the very beginning in the late 19th century, and then you walk all the way through towards basically what is 2025. Gives you an amazing view of innovation and of what man can do. Dear friends, it was about 20 years ago when I was in business school that I read a book which is called Against the Gods. Against the Gods, and it's written by Peter Bernstein. And what it does is it covers its cover featured a Renaissance-style painting, and that painting depicts a ship adrift and caught in a violent storm. And you see people looking up to the heavens, looking up basically for mercy. And this picture illustrates Bernstein's thesis that ancient civilizations, like the Greeks, perceived risk mostly to be dictated by what they considered the whims of the gods. They saw the future, in particularly trips overseas, of course very dangerous, as unpredictable and also as uncontrollable. And for many hundreds of years, civilizations' decisions were guided by superstition and sometimes by what they understood as divine interpretation. And then at some point a breakthrough happens. A breakthrough happens with the Renaissance and the Enlightenment. And it is great thinkers like Blaise Pascal and Pierre de Fermat who pioneered probability theory. And it was Bernoulli who developed the law of large numbers, which underpins modern statistics. And of course then others followed in their footsteps. And modern insurance, finance and scientific forecasting took the world by storm. I was introduced to this fascinating history and philosophy of risk in Bernstein's book. It was recommended to me by my statistics professor when I was at INSEAD. And even though it is 20 years ago, for me it truly left a mark. It left a mark particularly because the heroes of this book, some would say thriller, are not kings, are not warriors, are not crusaders. The heroes are, amongst others, insurers. And in Bernstein's story, insurers was a key milestone in the human journey from fatalism to rational risk management. Not because we've managed to completely eliminate risk, but because it transformed it into a cost, a price you can pay for peace of mind. And ladies and gentlemen, that is a bit of a long way to say that I'm truly delighted to be here with you today. Delighted also because it is a bit of back to memory lane. I know quite a couple of the people in the audience, given my interest and responsibility for insurance in one of my previous roles when I was a finance minister. So truly very good to see you, ladies and gentlemen, and maybe I could be honest. As a commissioner who is responsible for climate, I do need your help. Climate change, as you are painfully aware of as well, is driving more frequent, longer lasting and intense weather events. And Europe, our Europe, is hit particularly hard. We are the fastest warming continent on the planet. Temperatures have been rising twice the global rate since the 1980s. And just look back at the last few years. There are countless examples, truly countless examples of heat waves, heavier rainfall and stronger storms. Floods in Spain, Poland, Mayotte, Slovenia, Belgium, Germany, the Netherlands, and I'm sure I'm not mentioning the full list. And then, of course, there are heat waves and wildfires in the south of Europe every single summer, and the list goes on. The human cost is devastating. Too many are losing their lives, and also our economies are taking a truly substantial hit. If you just look at the EU, economic losses from weather and climate-related extremes have been steadily increasing over time. Here again, let's jump back to the 1980s. Average annual losses were around 8.59 billion euros a year. If we then look at the last couple of years, 2020 to 2023, they stood at an average of 44.5 billion euro annually. It's a massive increase. It's a massive increase of more than 400%. But the bad news, of course, is the trend only goes in one direction, and that is not necessarily linear. It's also even more complex if you then look at what is truly going on, because in the EU, only a quarter of the economic losses from climate events are actually insured. And of course, the situation varies very much by member state, not just in terms of the effect, not just in terms of how much of the heating is taking place, but some countries have as little as 5% of their losses insured. So dear friends, the bottom line is that climate change entails risks to everyone, to ordinary citizens, to businesses, to governments, to all of us. And of course to you as the insurance sector. And of course I do hear your concerns and your worries. You're dealing with higher claim payments. You're talking about the mathematics breaking down, where the premiums required exceed what people or companies can actually pay. And you have, and I think that is absolutely correct, concerns about the systematic risk to our financial system. And all of this, of course, leaves us with several fundamental questions. How do we actually go forward in the face of ever-increasing extreme climate events? What is it that we can do as policymakers? And what are potentially the economic opportunities, including for you as a sector, as we build up greater climate resilience and preparedness? Let me briefly try to outline how I see it. First, we absolutely need to keep cutting emissions fast to become climate neutral by 2050. And indeed, the European Union will absolutely stay the course. And we expect the rest of the world to do the same. And I say that well knowing that we're facing a global geopolitical winter. And indeed, climate action might not be as popular as it was 5 years ago. There are many other competing concerns, but frankly, our to-do list is not something the planet would care about. On the contrary, we will continue to endure more extreme weather events, but our ecosystems, including us, won't be so resilient. So climate change threatens everything we rely on. Economies, societies, frankly speaking, our way of life. So if we don't pursue mitigation at full speed, the cost of adapting to a changing climate will simply become insurmountable. That brings me to the second point, in addition to mitigation. We will absolutely need to ramp up our work on climate resilience and on preparedness. And that's absolutely and clearly a top priority for this Commission's mandate. Climate resilience simply cannot be an afterthought or an add-on. It needs to be at the very heart of everything we do because it is the very foundation of a competitive, secure and prosperous union. So we must be forward-looking. We must anticipate what conditions will be like in 10, 20 or 30 years and beyond. And that is why we're rolling out a European climate adaptation plan at the end of next year, at the end of 2026. And in the run-up to it, we're keen to work with all stakeholders to get it right. And of course, we see you, the insurance sector, as a key interlocutor, as absolutely instrumental in this process. As institutional investors, you control trillions of long-term assets and manage long-term liabilities. So for us, you are in a critical position to invest long-term. And that is key because Europe needs to invest in renewable energy infrastructure and technology. Investments that don't necessarily pay off right away. And you as a sector also have information on areas most exposed to climate risks. And frankly, you have maybe the best experience of how to protect citizens, businesses, governments, and the economy as a whole against these type of hazards. You're the experts in risk modeling, climate forecasting, and risk mitigation, and you price and manage climate risk with more sophistication than anyone. So we truly need to work together in the next 1.5 years to get this right, to get this plan as ambitious and as doable as we can. Now the good news is there is a lot that we can do to build a more climate resilient future. We certainly need and can bridge the information gap. We can, should, and will raise greater awareness and financial education about climate risks across society. But of course, risk awareness alone is not enough. We also need greater knowledge on measures that help to mitigate the risks. And now with our adaptation plan, the goal is to provide a clear direction of travel for governments, but also for businesses and for citizens. And we will need insights from insurers of what measures you think and you are convinced are most effective and how to prioritize investments to ensure best risk mitigation outcomes. What we'll also do is look at how to scale up sustainable finance, in particular transition finance and climate resilience. And here too, we would love to hear from you. For your sector, I understand your need for stronger and more effective adaptation measures that enable you to continue to provide coverage. And that, of course, requires clear risk ownership and more investments in climate adaptation. In my view, it also requires implementing risk reduction measures. Not easy, but certainly something we do need to do. We do need to push from a European, a national, regional, and a local level. And by giving more certainty around our adaptation policies, we will be able to aim to create a better environment for business and stimulate private investment in innovative solutions. And if we are able to do that, in turn, this can actually create a market that rewards climate resilience and actually encourages climate action. So, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, in this era of, unfortunately, rapid climate change, we might actually sometimes feel like those pre-Enlightenment humans. Little control, a lot of uncertainty. And indeed, certain things are just outside of our control and might just come to us. And the climate crisis and addressing it is very difficult. And within that debate, you have all sorts of complexities, all sorts of complex puzzles to solve. But if there's one thing I am absolutely optimistic about, and if there's one thing your sector has shown, and if there's one thing humanity has shown here in this museum, but also in the course of humanity at large, is that we can fix these type of things, even if it is hugely complex. Even if it takes years to get it right, even if it involves way more stakeholders than we have in this audience or in this city or just on this continent. If we learn from history, and if we put our mind to it, nothing is impossible. Rational tools, investment, and progress will see us through. And we shouldn't forget that we've risen to other hugely daunting challenges in the past. Challenges that have seemed insurmountable, like climate change sometimes does today. We won't get there by examining omens, consulting oracles, or trusting fate. But we will get there, first and foremost, by cutting emissions, and by pushing forward on climate action. What will also help are the rational tools which your sector will continue to provide and further perfect as we go along. And with these tools, I am deeply convinced we will manage risk, we will include climate risk proactively and not fearfully. If we can price it, we can manage it. If we can price it, we truly can manage it. So the future is not written in the stars, we are writing it, also here today. That makes me optimistic, and it feels a lot safer with all of you on my side. Thank you.